when Brother Branham has passed away in 65, in December, Sister Branham had such a knock on the head and didn't hardly know what day it was. She couldn't decide if the burial should be in Tucson, where they're going to live, or should be in Jeffersonville, where the church is. She couldn't decide. So the funeral director says, don't worry, I've got a place to keep him. You guys decide, you let me know. Well, by now they've decided. And so when we left on our honeymoon back to Jeffersonville, we came up through here, up to the Grand Canyon, went back that way. And so they'd planned this funeral, this burial, for the 11th of April. It was a Monday. And so we're there for that. And now during the years, Billy Paul always kept a close relationship with his grandma, Sister Brumbach. It was Hope's mother. And they'd always, it was his grandma. Well, she was a very hard lady. I never met her, but, never any emotion or nothing. Never went to church. So when Billy's going to the burial on that Monday, he leaves his two little boys with his grandma. So he comes to the burial. It was a rainy day, very, sad-looking day. And so we had the burial, and then Billy goes back to pick up his boys, and for the first time in his life, he caught his grandma crying. And she said, even the heavens weep for that man. So we left that day. We flew to California, and on the 15th of April, I left for 1 year in Vietnam. I was an Army cook in a hospital, kind of like the MASH unit or something, with no phone, no vacation, only letters. That was a trial by fire. That's when we find out who the Christians are. And I didn't go off to town like these other guys. So God was with me, and I even remember buying a Vietnamese Bible in town. And I'd show these people, see here, this is John, that's 3:16, and of course I couldn't read it, but it was already translated. Well, anyway, I came back and began in the translation business and spoken word. And so during all these years, we've been translating, recording, traveling. We were married just over 40 years. We've got 3 children and 3 grandchildren. But we've got to do a little fast forward here. By October of 2006, Rebecca was very, very ill. Now, she had been through some cancer operations. But you see, this wasn't just anybody. This was somebody that had lived 20 years with William Branham. She knew what miracles were. She knew what faith was. And so we were just doing everything we could to make things work right. But even with the operations and so forth, I could see that, this thing's slipping a little bit every day. And I said to her, now you know that God can heal you in the next 5 minutes. But if God chooses to take you, then you just get with your dad and wait for me there. And so a few days later, I got a call from a sister back east, a friend of ours, the family. And she wanted to tell me that day she'd been getting up from lunch from the table, and right across the table was a vision opened up. And she said, a big panoramic vision. And she said there was all these people, and there was Brother Branham preaching, and I could see the prayer line, and it was all, just a regular service. And she said all of a sudden he pointed right at me from the other dimension. And he said, you little sister, thank you for praying for my daughter Rebecca. And tell George everything will be okay. Hebrews 13:8 is still in effect. Well, when you hear those kind of things, you tend to pay attention. So I realized that things might not go the way I wanted, because I was at the point where I said, Lord, forget everything I've said. Just answer their prayer. Just, don't count me out. Well, sure enough, things, went on down. And on the 28th of November of 2006, the Lord took her, and everything was in order. I wasn't worried because I knew things were under control. And so after the funeral, I remember praying, Lord, keep me busy, keep me balanced, and keep me focused. So the focus is beyond the curtain of time. See, it's right out there. She's just waiting around the corner. And keeping balanced, of course, is a challenge because there's forces from everywhere, all kinds of weirdos. Let's face it, friends, everybody carrying spoken word but getting going to heaven. I hate to give you that news, but, we got a lot of strange people. But God knows who the bride is. So we just leave that to him. It's just like when you fly on an airplane. Now, if Billy Paul's traveling with me, he's over here, wearing out the, what do you call it, the armrest. Billy, we paid that guy to drive the plane. Forget it. You can't help. So that's their job. So I say, God's in charge of this whole thing. I'm not going to worry about who's going, who's not going. You see? So we've been quite busy. Last year, I was in 12 countries. A month ago, the first Sunday in February, I was in Cuba. I know Americans go to Cuba. Yeah, they go through Mexico or through Canada, But anyway, I was in Cuba. We had an invitation from some Pentecostal people to come down and talk a little more about the message. So we left some seeds planted there. Hey, I was in a church. It was a church of what's called the Assembly of God. They had 700 people there. There was 2 cars outside. Everybody walked. The deacon that I was visiting walked 3 kilometers to church. It's just life. It's just the way it is. It's not going to improve. And so they had, the women song leaders with the short skirt and all this stuff. It's their way, the big earrings. But that's all they know. So we've been able to make a little bit of a inroad there. And please come back. So then the next Sunday, after that, I was in Norway. They'd invited me to a meeting in Norway. And these people in Norway, there's just a few people. I mean, how many people live in Norway? Not many. Maybe 6 million. I mean, they're this big old country with a few people. So there's only a few believers. So we're at this meeting, and the brother that was directing the meeting, he's a house painter. And he had put out the brochures and come to the meeting. We're going to play a tape on this night. Brother George is going to speak on this night and so forth. Well, on the way from the airport in Oslo, we're going off who knows where to this brother's house. And so we're going down this freeway, and the brother's, this young man that picked me up, he's telling me about this program that they've put in play there in Norway, where that they've rented space on the back end of a huge bus, big bus. And they've got Brother Branham's picture, and they've got some words. And basically says, mark this number on your cell phone to hear what this man says. Of course, once they do that, then a voice comes in and says, if you want to hear more, if you want to get some literature, press 5 or whatever. So they're getting 5 or 6 calls a day from this, because it's on 2 buses. The bus goes like 100, maybe about 70 miles one way and back every day, both buses. Well, while he's telling me about this bus passes. He said, there it is, And sure enough, so these 2 buses are traveling every day. They're getting calls. What a great idea. I mean, them Americans, we put it on the side. Well, only the people sitting on the street can see that. But when you're driving, you're following this thing as long as you want to, So then they wanted to put Hoffman's head of Christ on another bus. So they submitted their plan and the words and all. Well, the bus company had this meeting. Nah, it's too powerful. We can't do that. People bound to wreck. They see that up there. So, now this isn't for free. These people are paying for this. For 1 year, it costs them $10,000 per bus. They're putting the money down, getting the job done. So that's where I was the second weekend in February. The third weekend, I was in Finland. We had a meeting over there. Now, the snow was about 1 foot deep, every place, and it was a warm time. It's supposed to be a lot colder, So I was thankful. But it was actually last month, this very day, the 25th of February, we were there. Then from there, in the last 10 days, I've been in Chile, South America. It's the other end. And so it's better for me because, of course, I speak Spanish. But we were with a group of people way down below Santiago in a very remote region that looks a lot like Switzerland. But just some humble people that don't know everything. They just know that they love the Lord. They love this message. And this pastor is a brother that's, I don't know, maybe 35 or 40 years old. And his testimony is that when he was 7 years old, he wandered in Santiago. He wandered over to this church. He came in, he liked what he heard, repented, was baptized at 7 years old. And he said, all my life, I've heard you speak on tape. Now I see you. I thought you were taller. So he's been listening to translations, just lovely people. But it was just a thrill to be with them. But as we go through this Laodicea, as we go through this crisis that we're all living through, I don't live in Flagstaff. I know that that you've got your friends, you've got your people that you associate with, and they're all watching you to see how you react. You know, here we make this big boast, we're believers, and we believe all the Bible. There's coming a time it's going to be put to the test. And you see, back there when I was taking Rebecca to the Baptist church, Brother Branham went with us sometimes. And he'd say amen to the word. Another time, he came out to the street to say goodbye to us. And so here I was in my two-door pickup, and I was driving, and here's Rebecca, and here's my sister. Well, in the back are my brothers and sisters, you know. And so he looks back there, and he says, "My, what a fine truckload of preachers you got here." Well, I didn't see any preachers, but I wasn't a prophet, you know. So sure enough, they're all good Baptist preachers. And one lives right here, and you all know him. And so he's doing what he does. Now, he's in Thailand right now, a missionary. So, Lord bless him. And he knows about this. I haven't, shunned to declare him part of this thing. So, God knows who's who and where they are and how it's all going to come around. But people are watching to see how you react. Okay, so you're believers. How do you react? And so, Jesus said in the scriptures, "By this shall all those people out there know that you're my disciples, because you got the right belt buckle, because you carry the picture, because you got an armload of books." No. How you love each other. How you react here is proof that you got the goods, And so we, there's always critics. Critics are every place. I don't pay much attention to the critics. There is a portion here that Brother Branham speaks on a tape called "The Unveiling of God" that I wanted to read to you. And he says here, "Now my subject this morning, I trust that God will reveal this. And each time, if you who take the tapes and listen, I hope and trust that you have had spiritual understanding of what God has been trying to get over to the church without saying it right out." See, Brother Branham had almost a sneaky way of saying things. I had a high school teacher that gave all these big lectures, and he was the same way. He'd be talking along on one level, say like of 1952, and then he'd drop to 1945, and then he'd come back up to 52 again. If he wasn't sharp, you didn't know he made that change. Well, Brother Branham talks like that. He'll be talking along, he'll drop to something else, and he'll come back to the same level again, and you might think it's down here, but you got to listen close, because he says without saying it right out. We have to say things in such a way that it might thin out. It might bring some to go out, some to leave, some to ponder over, but that's done purposely. It must be done that way. Some would say, "You mean God would purposely do a thing like that?" He certainly did, and he does yet today. Amen? So, in these trips overseas and all these places I go, I only go by invitation. I don't go busting the door down, "Hey, I'm here now." No, I go by invitation. Some of these places got to work through a translator, and they don't know some of these words. Like in Finland, I mentioned courtship. Well, they took 3 minutes trying to figure out what that word was going to be. I said, "Well, aren't you guys in love? I mean, what is this, So you got to help them. But a lot of times they have questions. I was in Africa in a huge church. I'm sitting there with the Sunday school report, and they said 4,700 present, 250 Bibles. So I got to talking to the pastors. "Man, I'll help you. What can we do here?" "Oh," he said, "no problem." He said, "They sell Bibles right here. We got plenty of money. We built this concrete church for 10,000 people. We got plenty of money." He says, "The problem is people can't read." "Oh, yeah, because when they're 8 years old, they're already working." And so by the time church was over, there was 6,000 people there. And so all of a sudden he jumps up beside me and he says, "Now, we don't know when Brother George is coming back." Of course, I was the only white guy there, solid. And he says, "Do you have any questions?" Well, you can imagine, 6,000 people. So they start coming over to the microphone, asking these questions. And, I can always say yes or no or I don't know. No problem. I don't run away from questions. And so one of the sisters put up a question and said, "Now, since the Lord took your wife, why are you still wearing the ring?" Wow, these people notice everything, And I said, "Well, the reason I still wear the ring is because my commitment to Rebecca wasn't until death do you part. It's forever." "Oh, okay." End of the problem. Well, some of the questions aren't that simple, obviously.